Hello, everybody, and welcome to Atheist Sunday School, your one-stop shop for everything Atheist Sunday and School. And boys and ghouls, do we have a show for you today. Today we are reading the book of Habakkuk, the whole thing. This is the Halloween special.
Yes. Happy Halloween.
Ooh.
We are scary. Look at us.
So spooky.
Barely see out of this thing.
But I can see enough to read.
That's all you need.
All I need. Woo.
I can read looking down.
It's kind of hot in this thing.
Also, the lights are pointed at you, and it's like black.
Yeah.
It's gonna heat up quick.
Yeah.
But you know what? At least we look great.
Yeah, it's Halloween enough.
Yep. We have with us Baal and the head of Josiah.
Sure, why not?
The head of Josiah.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else do we have up here? We have the scary writings of the Bible.
We have the King James version of the Bible.
And the English Standard Version.
And the Hebrew Bible, a translation with commentary by Robert Alter.
We also have the Old Testament Survey.
And Ereed Man's commentary of the
jeez.
Bible.
You guys, I can only imagine a future endeavor of mine cutting this into segments and me going, this will never be, I can never use that.
Yeah.
That's amazing, though, in some ways.
We also have the New King James and the Holy Scriptures according to some Jews.
And I also brought something else magical and mysterious. And we actually had this on the table for a while, but Prophecy and the Prophets in Ancient Israel.
By John D.
Wow, I
It's
could've
John
known about
Day,
that.
but John D is a different guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a paper in here on Habakkuk that we will be utilizing.
Excellent.
Yeah, all right. So,
Well, why don't I let you handle saying everything in the intro about Habakkuk?
okay, I'm going to take this thing off because at least the hood, because I can't really see all too well. But that was fun while it lasted. We might bring it back for a little bit, probably on the fly. All right, let's talk about Habakkuk. So Habakkuk is really similar to Job in that it addresses the issue with theology. With theodicy.
What issue?
The moral one about
The moral issue?
a pretty dominant one about how not only why do bad things happen to good people, but also why are you, oh God, sending this evil force as your instrument of justice and retribution?
Oh,
So that's another question that it will deal with.
well, that's a serious question. A spooky question.
So Habakkuk is, at least in Christian circles, it's really only referenced. It's referenced a few times in the New Testament.
And no, Chris, you're wrong. It was this book
Oh, it
that
was?
had nothing to say about Nahum.
Okay.
Yeah, it was this one. Not a single thing about Nahum.
Fair enough.
But it does have a whole thing on Habakkuk, surprisingly. So yeah, one of the most common verses that people can recognize from it is "The just shall live by faith." That is 2:4, and it's throughout the book of Habakkuk, it's the most quoted one within Christian literature, at least. So of course, I already talked about the theological issues that pop up. So you have the structure of it would be, Habakkuk is this guy who is complaining to God. So he's raising these issues with God, and hopefully he gets an answer. We'll see. But there are a lot of issues in these divine responses. So in the second divine response, the high point toward which the debate between the prophet and God has been building, the point at which the final resolution of Habakkuk's problem is expected, we encounter the book's key literary and exegetical challenges. The first of these challenges is the deciphering and translation of the difficult Hebrew in God's brief response to Habakkuk. So that's 2 through 4. And I'm sure Alter is going to have a whole spiel about that.
I'm sure.
He better. If not, what a bummer. So does it contain a new divine argument or merely promise a response in the future, one that is to be found perhaps in the subsequent sections of the book? The second major challenge is the relationship to the preceding debate of the literary units that follow this response. The first of these units is neither a prophetic complaint nor a divine response, but a collection of sayings spoken by conquered nations and peoples to ridicule the Chaldean oppressor, the Chaldeans being the Babylonians. The second of these units, introduced by superscription, often a sign of a later editorial activity in 3:1, and accompanied by musical notations characteristic of the Book of Psalms, is an elaborate victory hymn describing God's appearance as a conquering warrior. Now, we of course have had that imagery a lot, God as a warrior, because he was a war and storm god, which we have covered, back in the olden days.
Not a volcano god.
No.
Well, that's kind of what the whole book of Nahum was like, is a victory hymn.
I guess this ending portion will be kind of like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the basic picture of the shape of the book of Habakkuk and its message that emerges from this exegesis discloses 3 stages of literary and theological development in the book's compilation. The first is represented by the judgment speech delivered to Judah, 1:5 through 11, expressing the traditional prophetic theology of divine justice, according to which Judah's sins will be justifiably punished by a foreign invader. The second stage is the incorporation of this oracle into the elaborate debate in which this traditional theology of divine justice is questioned and then reconstructed with the second divine response. And in the wisdom of conquered peoples, the third stage involves the addition by later disciples of Habakkuk of an archaic victory hymn interpreted as the future intervention of God to restore absolute justice on earth. Now, and of course, that would make sense with all the imagery that would be hearkening back to the ancient ideas about Yahweh.
Yeah.
So about the setting, I think he was supposed to be a contemporary of Jeremiah, I believe, right before the invasion, right before the exile, I should say. So a lot of scholars, they place this. There's not really much that you can do to place it. At least, more you can't really specify it too much because there's not much in there. Because a lot of the vocabulary that's used, a lot of the imagery is very general. So there's not much that you can do on that front, but a lot of scholars think that all right. On the other hand, a Neo-Babylonian invasion of Judah would not have been conceivable until 605 BCE, when the Babylonians defeated the Assyrians and the Egyptians at Karshemish. So this would be before the actual exile, but there was this rising tide of this Neo-Babylonian force that you could see, they're coming for us next, potentially. So a lot of scholars take the position that it was written before the exile, but just before, while it was a rising power. Now, this commentator specifically notes that it had to be prophetic, otherwise it wouldn't be unbelievable. But to me, that's like saying...
That is unbelievable.
That's a fallacy. I forget the name of the fallacy. Maybe you remember it, but if someone was like, the Bible has to be written by God, otherwise it wouldn't be divine. I'm sure that's a fallacy, right?
I mean, that is wrong, but I'm not sure if there's an official fallacy.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Right,
Is it begging the question? It's begging the question.
Well, usually that's in a question format. It could be half of circular reasoning, right?
Sure.
Sure, okay.
But let me talk about the book of Habakkuk using Eerdmans. Nothing is known of the person or life of the prophet beyond his name. Many exegetes, however, have dated at least the first part of the prophecy with some confidence to the period shortly before the Battle of Carchemish in 605 BC, since this fits the announcement in 1:6 that God is about to raise up the Chaldeans, or Neo-Babylonians, as his agent of judgment. There may also be an allusion in 2:17 to Nebuchadnezzar's exploitation of the forests of the Lebanon. This period in the reign of Jehoiakim also fits the picture of social injustice reflected in the prophet's initial complaint, though I will note that this is assuming that Ex Ventu is not taking place, right?
Yeah.
The prophecy reflects a much greater degree of coherent order and arrangement than most of the prophetic literature. This may, of course, be due to the work of a later editor, but since it permits the exegesis of the text as a logical development of themes, there is much to be said for the working hypothesis that the book does reflect the message of the individual prophet as a whole, and that it is therefore to be set against the background of the closing decades of the kingdom of Judah, which I think thematically would be, an appropriate way to read it as a story, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, maybe not as a story, but in the same kind of, maybe not even wisdom. It's the same kind of thing as the other prophetic books, where you have like some kind of deliberation on things that are going on. So it's, you have like this pictured debate between Habakkuk and God. And
it's noted here.
The last chapter specifically, by the way, is like the one that most scholars are definitely like, this has to be later. Like, it's just so entirely different. It contains that ancient imagery, but it's reconstructed for the current situation. And apparently because it's really similar to a psalm in some ways.
Yeah.
That's another reason they placed that one to be like, at least its origins are earlier. Not that they just took it whole cloth, but they at least took like the form later and stuck it on the end.
Yeah. Well, here's some more notes. The paucity of specific allusions to datable contemporary events inevitably leaves the book open to a wide area of speculation about both its date and unity. One important element in the history of interpretation arises from the Pesher on Habakkuk, discovered at Qumran, 1 QP HAB. Although it covers only the first 2 chapters of the text, this is one of the earliest examples of a phrase-by-phrase commentary on an Old Testament book. And it is interesting that the exegesis is in terms of the events of the Qumran sectaries' own time, which they believe to have been predicted in the biblical text, and whose fulfillment they traced in the experience of their own community. This provides an interesting background to some of the comments on Old Testament passages found in the New Testament. So, that's that. Now, anything you want to pull up out of that book?
I mean, just a couple things here. So, the paper in here is called Law is Paralyzed, Habakkuk 1:4, Habakkuk's Dialogue with God and the Language of Legal Disputation by Kevin Cathart.
All right. Well, while you do that, I'm going to grab a water. You want one?
I'll take a Mountain Dew, though. I mean, Matthew was very right in the chat that I do love
Not sponsored by Mountain Dew.
No, but
yet.
Please sponsor us, Mountain Dew. I'll take that any day. So he kind of goes over the history of scholarship on Habakkuk, and in comparison to other books, there's not really that much. A lot of the commentaries described Habakkuk as kind of an early skeptic, although he wasn't a skeptic in the same sense we are, but at least he kind of pressured this, that he understood that there were some moral implications there, not necessarily the ones we would find, because I think the thing that we find the most, the one that we would contend the most with is why would God punish the Babylonians if he sent them for the things that they did, if he sent them to do those things?
Yeah.
Like that's our big moral contention. But the fact that
For fun?
but the fact that in Habakkuk you have a pious guy who's like, hey, there are some issues here. Why are you sending this evil nation as your instrument of destruction. So he had some things to say about it. So he kind of goes over the scholarship here a little bit, and then he goes on to say, some years ago, an article by the Japanese scholar D. Tsumara in 1892 on Habakkuk 2:2 in the light of Akkadian legal practice led me to a re-examination of Habakkuk 2:1 through 4. An examination of the language there seems to support a view that the legal system provides some of the formal elements in this short prophetic work. In the present study, I developed that view further. And so he goes on to say that while it's not strictly meant to be a legal scene, he would just be kind of taking from, here is what an interrogation is like. So I'm sure people would apply that, in social situations sometimes if they're like really mad at somebody or something, like they would apply that. It doesn't have to be in a legal setting.
Right.
But so there is a verse by verse commentary on some of these sections. So like in chapter 1 here, there's a section, there's actually 2 sections on chapter 1, and then it goes into chapter 2 for a little bit. And it's mostly about the text. And I guess we'll get there when we get there. We'll go at them one by one, but that is there for another potential commentary on any of the words we're wondering about, because it is mostly about the Hebrew. But the term, thank you. The terms are, often used in legal texts.
Okay. So then can I hop into it?
Great, go ahead. And you know what? Take this too.
I will.
Great. Now that's out of here.
The book of Habakkuk.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. The burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see. O Lord, how long shall I cry, and thou wilt not hear? Even cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save.
So for the opening line there, how long? So it occurs 12 times in the Old Testament, in Exodus 16:28 and Numbers 14:11. The words are used by God when he complains about the sin of the people. It is used in the Lament Psalms quite a lot. It also introduces the legal disputation context of Job 19:1 through 7, where there is, in verse 7, a significant parallel to the verse in Habakkuk. If I cry out lawlessness, no one answers. If I cry aloud, there is no justice.
All right. Why dost thou show me iniquity and cause me to behold?
Behold!
Grievance. For spoiling and violence are before me, and there are that raise up strife and contention. Therefore the law is slacked, and judgment doth never go forth. For the wicked doth compass about the righteous.
Wow.
It cuts off between.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Compass about the righteous. Therefore wrong judgment proceedeth. Behold, ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your days, which ye will not believe, though it be told to you. For, lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. Their horses also are swifter than the leopards, and are more fierce than the evening wolves. And their horsemen shall spread themselves, and their horsemen shall come from far, and they shall fly as the eagle that hasteth to eat. They shall come all for violence. Their faces shall sup up as the east wind, and they shall gather the captivity as the sand. And they shall scoff at the kings, and the princes shall be a scorn unto them. They shall deride every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it.
So initially,
how many particles of dust?
Stop.
Does it take to heap it?
So the Chaldeans are, of course, kind of represented like these as predators initially. Have those things about wolves, right? And the birds of prey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that was the first 10 verses.
Yeah, that was the first 10. So I think the translation in yours was probably a little bit different. In fact, it's different in Ultra's as well. So one of the most common verses here was actually in verse 4. Tapug Torah probably means law is paralyzed, or perhaps law is weak. Mishpat in the second colon is best translated as justice. So in verse 4 there, so therefore teaching fails, and justice never comes forth. For the wicked surrounds the righteous, therefore perverted justice comes forth. And then in the fourth colon as judgment. The parallel pair, Torah and Mishpat, is found in Deuteronomy 17:11, as well as in Isaiah 51 and Psalm 89. There is no evidence to support the view that Torah refers to the failure of a reform in the time of Josiah. Huck thinks Habakkuk is referring to the ineffectiveness of the king of Judah, who was responsible for the maintenance of law and order. It is more likely that Habakkuk is complaining to God that he is inactive and failing to ensure the effectiveness of the law. Habakkuk's complaint that justice has not gone out can be compared with Job's cry in Job 19:7, if I call aloud, there is no justice.
All right. Now, Eerdmans says here that 1:6 may refer to Nebuchadnezzar's pursuit of the Egyptians to Hamath after the Battle of Carchemish in 605 BC, and his subsequent speedy return to Babylon to secure his own succession as king. In verse 8, wolves at dusk is less likely interpreted than wolves of the steppe. The same applies at Zephaniah 3:3.
Wolves of the steppe or wolves of the steppe?
Steppe.
Oh, okay.
Steppe.
Old steppy.
The overriding impression of the description of the Chaldeans is that of a ruthless pursuit of their own aims, without regard to the rights or authority of anyone else. They themselves epitomize the violence that they are supposed to be punishing as God's agents of judgment. Now, this verse that I'm about to read, 1:11, is obscure. The verbs in the Hebrew are singular, and it's possible that this verse is not part of the description of the Chaldeans. So,
I got something on that one too once you read it.
yeah, I will read it then. Then shall his mind change, and he shall pass over and offend, imputing this his power unto his God.
Wow, that's very different here. So Alter translates it as then passes on like the wind and attributes his might to his God. Attributes there. The Masoretic text reads we Hashem, guilty, but the Qumran Pesher Habakkuk shows the more likely Weasem, I guess. And there is, unfortunately, nothing on that specific verse here.
All right. Well, it's odd that it is singular. Now I'm in verse 12. Art thou not from everlasting, O Lord, my God, mine Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, thou hast ordained them for judgment, and, O mighty God, thou hast established them for correction.
All right, tell me when you get to... Actually, yeah, we'll discuss this this next section up until the end. So
okay. Thou art of purer eyes than to behold.
Behold!
Evil.
Ooh!
And canst not look on iniquity. Wherefore lookest thou upon them that deal treacherously, and holdest thy tongue when the wicked devoureth the man that is more righteous than he? And makest men as the fishes of the sea, as the creeping things that have no ruler over them?
Yeah, so he's launching into an extended metaphor of fish caught in the net to convey the helplessness of humanity in the face of the destruction.
They take up all of them with the angle. They catch them in their net and gather them in their drag. Therefore they rejoice and are glad. Therefore they sacrifice unto their net and burn incense unto their drag, because by them their portion is fat and their meat plenteous. Shall they therefore empty their net and not spare continually to slay the nations?
Yes, that was a really weird one. So that was the end there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a really weird one. Therefore, he sacrifices to his net. So it is unclear whether this reflects an actual cultic practice of ancient fishermen or is merely a poetic hyperbole. In any case, it picks up attributes his might to his God from verse 11.
Well, the bit about the net in 1QP Habakkuk from Qumran,
Yeah.
of course. There's an interesting variant reading which says his sword in place of his net, with the difference of only one consonant in the Hebrew. The verb translated as emptying is also regularly used of unsheathing a sword, and it's quite possible that this is the original reading. According to the variant, verse 17 reads, "Is he then to keep on unsheathing his sword and destroying nations without mercy?"
Oh, yeah, actually, unsheath his sword is also mentioned in here. Received text has his net, but the Qumran Pesher reads his sword.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's on that one. So the significance and why it's kind of divided up here at verse 12. So the oppression and disorder around him prompts the distressed Habakkuk to complain about the apparent indifference and inactivity on Yahweh's part. In this complaint, we encounter motifs which are typical of lament psalms. The question in 112, "Are you not from of old, Yahweh?" is significant. The phrase "from of old" is a link to several important biblical texts. So he's quoting, especially lament psalms. So he's quoting like 4 different psalms here and Isaiah 51:9. So there's quite a lot of them that have very similar construction. Awake as in the days of old, what deeds you did in their days, in the days of old. Remember your congregation that you created of old. So yeah, that kind of thing is found quite a bit. Reminding God of his eternity and power with the words, "You are from of old and you shall not die," Habakkuk resumes his reproof of Yahweh in forensic terms. Instead of defeating the invader as he defeated Leviathan in primeval days of old, or as he had conquered Israel's historical enemies in former times, he has allowed the foe to treat him, quote, "like the fish of the sea, like the creeping things that have no ruler." It basically just describes more of the imagery there in other places you can find it.
All right. Well, if you enjoyed that first chapter, be sure to give us a like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends, family, neighbors. You hold on to that. You already know what's in it. Right.
Okay. I mean, I guess that for this this second section here,
And it really only has textual commentary, which, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. You know what? No, just take it. You don't have to read anything out of it, but if it comes up, it's going to be there.
Okay.
That's for chapter 2. Yeah, and make sure you guys drop a like because that's very important to us.
So now we're getting into chapter 2, and you know what? The climax of the prophet's dialogue with God comes in 2:1 through 5. Although, unfortunately, textual obscurities make it unclear exactly where and how it ends. So this is going to be obscure. And
Fantastic. Don't you just love obscure readings?
yeah.
All right, let's make this all scary.
So why don't you just read through, and I will, after verse 5, give a whole detail.
Sounds good. Is this scary enough, everybody?
Oh, yeah. Ooh, so scary.
Yeah, I know, isn't it? All right, so chapter 2. I will take my stand at the watchpost and station myself on the tower and look out to see what he will say to me and what I will answer concerning my complaint. So I like that. He's straight up saying, all right, I'll wait for the answer and then I'll come up with something to say back to him. And the Lord answered me, write the vision, make it plain on tablets.
So the reason for recording prophetic messages sometimes so that the records would serve as evidence of the prophecies when they were later fulfilled, thus vindicating the authority of the prophet.
Right.
Although
that sounds like another way.
Yeah. The written records of prophecies also served as encouragement during the period before their fulfillment. In the present case, part of the reason for the record seems to be to publicize the message. 2:3 makes clear both that there is an appointed time in God's purpose for the fulfillment of the prophecy and that the time has not yet come. Delayment in the fulfillment of prophecies sometimes engender doubt as their genuineness, as in Ezekiel.
Yeah, to me, it definitely just does seem like another way to give it some weight, some credibility. Yeah, so make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay.
So there's a difference here. You said it hastens to the end.
Yes.
Alter says, for there is yet a vision for the appointed time and a witness for the end who is not false. And he notes here, some prefer to amend od, yet, to aid, witness, yielding a neat parallelism within the second verset. A vision for the appointed time, the end. The phraseology was picked up by Daniel and imbued with apocalyptic meaning, but the reference here is simply to the time when Babylonian domination will come to an end, as is made clear in the verses that follow.
And, it kind of reminds me of that old joke where someone's speeding and they get pulled over, and the cop asks, do you know how fast you were going? And they say, oh, sorry, I got here as fast as I could. I don't know. It just strikes me just a lot like that joke. It's coming. It's coming as fast as it can. It'll be here. Just keep waiting. It'll show up. Anyways, verse 4. Behold. His soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous shall live by his faith. Of course, that's the one that's quoted all the time. Yeah, him being puffed up. We've had that a lot. We've, a lot of parallels to that, a lot of synonyms to that, I should say, like stiff-necked.
And there's another unclear word here. So Alter translates this as, look, the spirit within him is callous, not upright.
Oh.
And he says the meaning of upla is uncertain, but it probably relates to a root that means to wrap. And so the surmise reflected in this translation is that it indicates being enveloped, impervious to true perception.
So what does this have to do with Slim Shady?
It doesn't.
You said rap.
No. Different.
I know. Moreover.
Also.
Okay, go ahead.
This book, Law is Paralyzed.
Okay.
Right? It says that verse 4 is probably the best known in the book of Habakkuk.
Yeah.
Although various problems make its translation difficult, many scholars consider it important for the understanding of the book as a whole. J.A. Emerton has discussed at length the various theories that have been proposed to solve the textual difficulties in 4 through 5.
Should I finish 5 then?
Yeah.
Okay. Moreover, wine is a traitor. There's also a note here that says, or it could be wealth. Apparently, the Masoretic text, the Dead Sea Scrolls have wealth. Moreover, wine is a traitor, an arrogant man who is never at rest. Of course, the meaning of those 2 lines is actually uncertain, so we're just throwing stuff at a wall, seeing what sticks. His greed is as wide as Sheol. Like death, he has never enough. He gathers for himself all nations and collects as his own all peoples. He's greedy.
So Alter has an alternative translation. Now it says Eerdmans states 2:5 is probably an addition to the placarded slogan made by the prophet himself. The reading wealth makes more sense in context than wine. And verse 5 is probably intended to apply to the negative statement of the first half of verse 4 to the Chaldeans in particular. The second and third parts of the verse seem to reflect the aggrandizement depicted in the earlier descriptions of the Chaldeans. If this interpretation of the passage is correct, God's answer to the prophet's complaint is that the Chaldeans will not ultimately succeed in their ambitions, that in the meantime, the righteous must patiently endure their oppression, fortified by their loyalty to and confidence in God. This is the secret for their life. The last clause of 2:4 is quoted in the New Testament out of context. In Romans 1:17 and Galatians 3:11, Paul quotes it in a slightly different form.
Yeah, Jason did already get those for us.
Yes.
As the command has dictated.
Yeah.
What do I put in?
What? Exclamation.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
First?
Yes.
Yeah, it may be reasonably claimed that he's penetrating to the basic principle stated in Habakkuk and drawing out its universal significance. In Hebrews 10:37 through 38, parts of Habakkuk 2:3 through 4 are quoted in a version closely similar to that of the Septuagint, but in a slightly different order. The two halves of verse 4 are reversed, and in such a way as to stress the difference between the fidelity of the righteous and the shrinking back of others, where who shrinks back is the Septuagint's rendering of the obscure word rendered the proud in the NRSV at 2:4. In it stresses on the faithfulness of the righteous. The quotation in Hebrews comes close to the meaning of the clause in Habakkuk. The New Testament citations underline the fact that the essential part of the divine answer to Habakkuk's complaint is to be found in the second part of 2:4, where the textual uncertainties are least. But Alter here translates verse 5's opening very differently. He says, "How much more so the arrogant, treacherous one who presumes and who does not prosper." He says...
That's right.
Yeah, very, very different. Of course, the biggest problem with Habakkuk, as we have come to learn very quickly, is it's really, really uncertain. We have no idea what, especially with all the textual variations, we have no idea what some of these verses are supposed to mean.
And this is because Alter prefers a different vowel reading of the word that's used. He says, for who presumes, the translation reads Heihin instead of the Masoretic Hayayin, the wine, right?
Yeah, which is what we have here.
And unfortunately, the standard text would be, skeletal. It wouldn't have vowels, so good luck.
Yeah, right. People have plenty of competing ideas on those. All right, so on to verse 6. Shall not all these take up their taunt against him?
I think that's everything that's covered in this book.
Okay, great.
Yeah, this goes up to verse 5 of chapter 2.
Fantastic.
And then that's the end. And here's this.
But God, amazing.
Wait
Okay.
a second, you already have one of those. This must be for something else.
It was for that book.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall not all these take up their taunt against him with scoffing and riddles for him and say, woe to him who heaps up what is not his own. For how long? And loads himself with pledges.
So this is debt. Pledges. Weighs himself with debt.
Ah, okay.
Babylonian has incurred debt by seizing from the nations what does not belong to it, and thus it owes them.
Ah, okay. That makes a lot more sense. Will not your debtors suddenly arise, and those awake who will make you tremble? Then you will be spoil for them, because you have plundered many nations. All the remnant of the peoples shall plunder you for the blood of man and violence to the earth, to cities and all who dwell in them. So, yeah, because of this debt, people are going to come and, essentially take back what's theirs in a way. Not exactly, but, take back what's theirs in a way. That's the way I got going on there. Woe to him who gets evil gain for his house.
Yeah, so this is verse 9?
Yes.
Yeah, so evil gain, Alter says illicit gain, but the Hebrew betzah is literally a slice cut off. That's what it means, a slice cut off, evidently from an ingot of silver in a cheating practice.
Okay, so it wouldn't mean like portion then?
Yeah, but like illicitly gained.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay. Anyways, back to the scary. All right. I know it's so spooky over here. Yeah. Woe to him who gets evil gain for his house, to set his nest on high, to be safe from the reach of harm. You have devised shame for your house by cutting off many peoples. You have forfeited your life. For the stone will cry out from the wall, and the beam from the woodwork respond. Wow, it's that serious.
Yeah.
It's really serious.
Yeah, the house is going to start wailing. And I guess at each other. On to verse 12. Woe to him who builds a town with blood and founds a city on iniquity. Behold!
Behold.
Is it not from the Lord of hosts that peoples labor merely for fire and nations weary themselves for nothing?
So
I guess just to survive.
Alter translates this, is it not from the Lord of armies? And people shall strive for the fire, and nations for naught shall be wearied. And he says here, what they will strive
so they're
for...
barely holding themselves together.
Yeah. What they strive for will be consigned to destruction. The entire verse approximately duplicates Jeremiah 51:58.
Classic. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Woe to him who makes his neighbors drink. You pour out your wrath and make them drunk in order to gaze at their nakedness.
So,
yeah, remember the cup of wrath?
yes.
Yeah.
There's the cup of wrath. Alter also translates this differently. He says, woe who gives drink to his friend, adding venom and making him drunk, as to look on his nakedness. But the Hebrew, veering between grammatical persons, has their nakedness.
Well done.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can continue. This whole section is just woes.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Whoa.
Right, whoa.
Whoa, man.
You will have your fill of shame instead of glory. Drink yourself and show your uncircumcision. What an interesting verse.
Eerdmans points
What an interesting verse.
that verses 13 and 14 may be a later addition to the original woe.
Yeah, I was not expecting that verse. The cup in the Lord's right hand will come around to you, and utter shame will come upon your glory. The violence done to Lebanon will overwhelm you, as will the destruction of the beasts that terrified them. For the blood of man and violence to the earth, to cities and all who dwell in them. So that's the exact thing we saw earlier on in the chapter.
What verse has Lebanon? Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's verse 17.
The outrage of Lebanon. The reference is to the many trees from the Lebanon forest cut down by the Babylonians for their building projects and the animals slaughtered for their consumption.
Yeah, makes sense there. What prophet is an idol when its maker has
Also,
shaped it? Sorry, go ahead.
In verse 16, this is the last line of it. What does it say for you?
The cup in the Lord's right hand will come around to you, and utter shame will come upon your glory.
Okay, Alter specifies noxious shame. And he says, the unique kikalon looks as if it is a portmanteau word coined by Habakkuk from ki, vomit, and kalon, shame. The same word that is used near the beginning of the verse. So this is a word that is unique to the book of Habakkuk. It is a special kind of shame.
Interesting. That's good to know.
Yeah.
What a shame.
What prophet is an idol when its maker has shaped it? A metal image, a teacher of lies?
So Alter says gives false oracles.
I mean,
this could be rendered as teaches falsely, but the cultic context makes the sense of oracle likely. The denunciation of idol worship in this verse and in the next, reminiscent of passages in 2nd Isaiah and elsewhere, is not entirely in keeping with the prophecy of the downfall of Babylonia. It's possible that the prophet sees the devotion to inert wood and stone as part and parcel of the unreflective and misguided character of the Babylonian Empire.
That explains everything.
Well, and yeah, that would be completely in line with all the other stuff we've seen about idols in plenty of books already.
Yeah. Now, Eerdmans points out the fifth woe in verses 18 through 20 is concerned with idolatry. Very possibly in the background is the fear that the rapid growth of the Babylonian Empire reflects the superior power of their gods, which would be, commonplace in the ancient world.
Yeah. If you win, your god must be better. For its maker trusts in his own creation when he makes speechless idols. Woe to him who says to a wooden thing, awake, to a silent stone, arise. Can this teach? The answer is no, of course.
Right. So there's a note here in Eerdmans that the introductory alas or woe doesn't come until the beginning of verse 19, raising the suspicion that verses 18 and 19 may have been displaced, or that verse 18 is a secondary comment.
That would make some sense there, I suppose.
Because it's very formulaic elsewhere in the text.
That's true. That is true. Behold!
Behold!
It is overlaid with gold and silver, and there is no breath at all in it. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him.
Yeah.
You know what else is silent?
The stream if you don't say anything.
Yeah, that's true.
So the other unusual feature is the absence of a
The
pronouncement.
night. The answer is the night.
Oh, shit. Wow. I would have never guessed. My
Yes.
bad.
The other unusual feature is the absence of a pronouncement of judgment, but the solemn statement of God's majesty in verse 20 itself, pointing forward to the theophany in chapter 3, may have been felt as to be an effective variation of the normal pattern. So, this last woe section definitely breaks the formula.
It does.
Which may be suggestive of it being a later edition, or parts of it being a later edition.
Right. Because the thing is, it does kind of fit in with like how kind of it's as a description of how the people are, I guess. But it does break away from the formula. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was chapter 2. Now we're whoa. Do you?
Whoa.
Hear something?
Hear something.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Spooky.
Behold, I am your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I want to let all you heathens and sinners know that I support this wonderful episode of Atheist Sunday School. Lawrence and Reuben try their very best to bring you the true glory of the Bible, and they need your help. They have provided links to their Patreon page and other social media just for you. Once again, my name is Jesus Christ, and this is Milwaukee Atheists. The Lord is with them. God bless.
It has been done.
What? What's up?
Reuben,
What?
I have made him disappear.
Oh, happy. That's
He is-
a nice thing.
He is no more.
Hooray.
The deed has been complete.
Yep. Well, hopefully he
No.
resurrects from the dead.
No,
No.
I have made this impossible.
Possible.
No.
So no readings. We're done. I could just.
I shall
stream off,
continue reading.
I could just push this stop stream button around. in
No.
this section over here.
The deed has been done.
Okay. Well, what are we reading
Perhaps
about now?
I, as a mage or something, can make him come back to life.
Nah.
I suppose I can in a little bit.
No.
Either way, we're hopping into the final chapter of Habakkuk and the final chapter of the day, of course. That just makes logical sense. Chapter 3. And speaking of resurrections and magic and...
Down there.
hello.
I was brought a terrifying vision.
I didn't do that.
Ooh, spooky things did I
I
see.
didn't do that.
I saw a horrific vision of creatures and witches and goblins and things walking about in the streets the size of children, going door to door, stealing sweets.
Oh no!
Oh no!
I need the sweets for my potions and my
Okay.
spells.
Yes, these evil creatures, they are truly horrific.
I could not concur
Heard
more.
Habakkuk? I don't know.
What?
Nothing.
All right. So for chapter 3 here, we did discuss chapter 3 in the introduction a little bit about how this is the one that most scholars agree is probably just a later addition as some sort of victory hymn, and it has all the imagery of God as a warrior in it. So the many obscurities over details in this chapter make its interpretation difficult. The first verse is an editorial title, indicating that the rest of the chapter is a self-contained composition similar to the Psalms and Lamentations. So there is a technical term in here, I suppose, and it's in the first. Actually, just read verse 1.
A prayer of Habakkuk, the prophet, upon Shigionoth.
Yes. So that word there also.
A shiggy diggy.
You know.
Yeah, that word there. I'm gonna say a few things about it. Shigionoth, like Selah, in 3:3, 9, and 13, is an unknown technical term, probably of musical or liturgical meaning. Of course, we ran into that all throughout the Psalms. Selah, at least. This is just another one, I guess.
Yep.
And it looks like, yeah, Alter does agree with that position. That basically just acts exactly like that. Although it's weird that it's placed there. So a prayer of Habakkuk the prophet on the Shigionoth. Yeah. As is often the case in the Book of Psalms, the identity of this musical instrument is not known, although the verbal stem could suggest a rhapsodic or elevated state.
All right. So these are Habakkuk's like fire rhymes. This is Habakkuk's mixtape that he's putting forward for us. So let's see how hardcore his
I'm ready for this.
his track is.
I'm ready
Yeah.
for this.
Okay.
You don't look ready.
O Lord, I have heard thy speech and was afraid. O Lord, revive thy work in the midst of the years, and in the midst of the years make known. In wrath remember mercy. God came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran. Selah. Oh.
Yeah, so we got some interesting stuff there.
There's a rhyme.
And a Salah.
His glory covered the heavens,
So I
and
do
the
wanna-
earth was full of his praise.
Yeah, so I do want to point out a few things here. So 3 through 7 describe the theophany or vision of God. It is cast in essentially traditional terms of a storm, with God appearing from the general direction of Sinai. The closest parallels are in Deuteronomy 33:2, Judges 5, 4 through 5, and Psalms 68, 7 through 8. Now, of course, this forms, I guess, a pillar. I'm not going to say it's the only one, but a pillar of Thomas Romer's argument of Yahweh initially being a god coming from, kind of the modern Saudi Arabia region, from the southern region there, and then kind of, as people migrated upwards, they took this Yahweh god with them. So he finds the origins of Yahweh in essentially Edom, I guess, at least in the land that would be Edom, right? So he essentially finds the origin there in the Sinai region, which would make sense. And then kind of traveled north.
Yes.
And this is one of the basis of his arguments.
All right. And his brightness was as the light. He had horns coming out of his hand, and there was the hiding of his power. Before him went the pestilence, and burning coals went forth at his feet.
Ooh.
Oh, so God has horns and brings pestilence and burning coals.
Well, okay, so
Hey.
that was verse 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, so his before him pestilence goes and plague comes forth at his feet. Was horns in verse 4? Or
Yeah, it's in the middle of verse 4. Horns coming
Oh.
out of his hand.
Yeah, I think we had this issue before as well. So and the radiance is like light beams from his hand
Oh.
he has.
Okay.
And there his might is broken. I think that was one of the things with Moses too, right?
Yeah.
In some of the translations it said horns, and then in other ones it would be the radiance, the light.
Right.
So I think that's a similar issue. Yeah, Jason. Jason was right there with me.
Yeah. He stood and measured the earth, and beheld,
Beheld.
and drove asunder the nations, and the everlasting mountains were scattered. The perpetual hills did bow. His ways are everlasting.
So I actually do have something interesting here. So the rays coming forth from God's hand in verse 4 have been explained in the light of ancient iconography. The storm deity is represented as holding forked lightning in his hand. Verse 5 represents God as attended by a military escort of pestilence and plague, the word translated plague being Resheph, which is elsewhere the name of a West Semitic god of plague. Verses 6 and 7. Did you already finish 7?
No.
Okay, so tell me once you finish 7.
I saw the tents of Cushan in affliction, and the curtains of the land of Midian did tremble.
Okay, that was verse 7. Yeah, so verses 6 and 7 describe the radical disturbance wrought by the advent of God on both the natural order and human nations. Cushan and Midian are probably singled out as among the first areas to be affected in God's progress from the Sinai region to Judah, the tents and tent curtains referring to the nomadic population of this region. I guess it was semi-nomadic, I would say.
Was the Lord displeased against the rivers? Was thine anger against the rivers? Was thy wrath against the sea, that thou didst ride upon thine horses and thy chariots of salvation?
Yeah, so although in other contexts, these the two words Neharim and Yam, which of course you had rivers and sea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Two words can mean respectively rivers and sea. The usual plural of the former is Neharot, here they hark back to Canaanite mythology, where they figure as different names for the primordial sea monster.
Spooky.
Yeah, right. Monsters. Oh,
Spooky primordial sea monsters.
so next time one of us is gonna dress as Yam, the sea god,
Or as Tiamat.
as Tiamat,
Or Abzu.
or a Leviathan.
Yeah.
Or the winged dragon.
Yeah. Not only will
we
I
could get one of those like Chinese New Year dragon costumes.
We could, yeah.
Yeah, for the lion dance.
And, not only will we look like winged dragons, we'll hit the town and I'm kidding.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Shout out to Solomon. Okay, the bow was made quite naked according to the oaths of the tribes, even thy word, Selah. Thou didst cleave the earth with rivers. The mountains saw thee, and they trembled. The overflowing of the water passed by. The deep uttered his voice, and lifted up his hands on high. The sun and moon stood still in their habitation. At the light of thine arrows they went, and the shining of thy glittering spear. Thou didst march through the land in indignation. Thou didst thresh the heathen in anger. Thou wentest forth for the salvation of thy people, even for salvation with thine anointed. Thou woundedst the head out of the house of the wicked by discovering the foundation unto the neck. Selah. Thou didst strike through with his staves the head of his villages. They came out as a whirlwind to scatter me. Their rejoicing was as to devour the poor secretly.
Remember that in
in
Proverbs.
Proverbs,
Yeah.
right. Thou didst walk through the sea with thine horses, through the heap of great waters. How many milliliters of water does it take to create a heap?
The great waters were roiled. That's what it says in Altar.
There isn't even a heap.
No, apparently not a heap at all.
Though, how many translations does it take to make a heap in the Bible for this part? What percentage of translations does it require for this particular verse to have heap in it?
That's not how it works.
Isn't it?
No.
No.
Words are what we decide they are, Lawrence.
Yeah, I understand that, but
Nobody
it would
agrees
still
with you.
say the same thing. Heap would just be our translation for it.
True. But it would be what we're reading.
We did read it.
What if they make a translation of the KJV into some other? I'm sure they have.
They definitely have.
They would use the word for heap.
They probably would, yeah.
Yep. So they would say the same thing
Man,
as
it's
you.
a shame they don't have the original manuscripts. What a bummer.
Yeah, it's a
It's a
big shame.
No one has that.
Yep. When I heard, my belly trembled, my lips quivered at the voice. Rottenness entered into my bones, and I trembled in myself that I might rest in the day of trouble. When he cometh up unto the people, he will invade them with his troops.
So yeah, rot comes into my bones. So I'm guessing. So it sounds like he's slowly dying here.
Got bone rot.
So this sounds odd.
like
but the idea,
Job.
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds odd. But the idea is probably that the bones became squishy, as though they had been eaten away by rot. I guess maybe.
Like when someone shakes in fear.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah,
I guess.
quake where I stand. Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Although the fig tree shall not blossom, neither shall fruit be in the vines, the labor of the olive shall fail, and the fields shall yield no meat. The flock shall be cut off from the fold, and there shall be no herd in the stalls.
So apparently,
This is similar to that curse that keeps popping up.
yeah, but this is kind of applied differently.
Yeah, it
Here.
is.
It's applied to agriculture rather than.
Well, that was
people.
part of it originally, is that
I mean, I remember the stuff about.
they'll work, but they won't be able to eat.
Oh,
from
that's right. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Some take this entire verse as a reference to a plague of locusts because of a certain similarity to the language of Joel. But it is, oh, yeah, I remember the locusts in Joel, yeah. But it is perfectly plausible that the fields and the livestock would be devastated by an invading army. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. The Lord God is my strength, and he will make my feet like hinds' feet, and he will make me to walk upon mine high places, to the chief singer on my stringed instruments. That's like a weird postscript.
He makes my feet like the gazelles and has me tread upon the heights. Okay, that one makes sense.
Yeah.
For the lead player on stringed instruments. This is actually a superscription for introducing a psalm, not a formula for concluding it. One suspects that this chapter was copied from a non-canonical manuscript of Psalms, and that the copyist inadvertently included at the end a line that in fact belonged to the next psalm in the manuscript. Man, this is why I love textual history, because that is hilarious to me.
Guys, we finished the book of Habakkuk, and 10 pages.
Oh, is that all we have left?
10 pages, guys.
I'm gonna see if this mentions anything on the very last concluding line here. That was verse 19? What was that?
It's the last verse. I just closed it.
All right, so verse 19. Okay, fine, fair enough.
Over.
Yeah. They don't actually have anything on that. All right, weird one to not have anything on, but I guess it's just that one thing. So,
guys, 10 pages.
yeah, we are getting there. We are very close. Isn't that exciting? Aren't you
Yeah.
guys excited?
I'm so excited
Let's see,
to
we got
be done with
the Old Testament.
the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have Zephaniah coming up next, apparently.
Yep.
I wonder what
think.
he has to say about anything. I don't even remember. Is he long? No, I don't think so.
Zephaniah, I think this was the one that was no. This one's also short.
Zechariah is the
Zechariah.
one that's longer.
That's right. That is right.
Zephaniah is short, and the
gonna be
one
one
after
episode
it's
of that.
short. What's the one after it?
After Zephaniah, Haggai.
Haggai is really short. It's like 2 chapters.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very, very short.
But yeah, guys, we're so close to finishing the Old Testament. Holy shit.
Yeah, and you know what, Sammy, I like that enthusiasm. Keep it up, buddy.
Yeah. Right. Great.
You go. Nice
Only you
clap
like that.
for you.
Final thoughts on Habakkuk.
You know, aside from the fact that so much of it still is kind of obscure because they're just, words. Apparently there's a word that pops up for the first and only time there.
Yep.
And the fact that some of the text is just so obscure to us. It's aside from that huge textual issue, which I assume would could potentially make interpretation very difficult, first of all. And second of all, you could easily run into a bunch of theological debates. Like, I don't know if the Christians in our chat have ever gotten into a debate over Habakkuk dependent on different translations. But I assume that if it did happen, like that is something that would pop up there.
Yeah. As far as the book goes, not the best.
No, it was pretty mediocre, honestly.
Very standard, almost like a 5 out of 10.
It's kind of like Job, but applied to the nation instead of the individual. And, the back and forth with God doesn't really, it's not in depth at all. It's just like one statement.
It doesn't really pan out to much either.
No, it's not great.
Yeah.
I am getting sick and tired of talking about Babylonians. I'll tell you what.
They'll be gone.
Eventually we'll stop talking about them as much, but Yeah, once we get to the New Testament,
Just all
you
of
have to worry about
all these
Greek
prophets. They keep talking about Babylonians. We've been talking about Babylonians for like a year.
that
Okay.
is a tradition.
It was
It's
the
a bit much.
Assyrians before that.
Well, the thing is, we talked about all of them, obviously, but because of the way we were reading it,
When was Egypt before that? And they really railed on these guys.
oh
a
my
lot.
God, it's almost as if the Bible wasn't written in a vacuum.
Crazy though.
Yeah, right.
yeah. So yeah, I'll rate it like a 4 out of 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
around there too, 4 or 5.
I'm gonna assume that chapter 3 was a later edition.
Yeah, it does. It does kind of seem that way, especially with the not only the amount of similarities that it has to other ones, but yeah, that ending, the really weird ending.
It comes out of nowhere.
Yeah,
It's a bunch of victory stuff though.
it is. Yeah, I like the imagery though. So that last chapter is definitely the most interesting one because of that. I think
I would have rated it a 4 if it wasn't for the last chapter. Actually.
Really.
Yep.
I liked the last chapter, but only because
I'm rating it a 4 because of the last chapter.
Oh shit!
Because of how out of place it is and how it breaks up the sequence that was being.
I like
True.
that.
I just thought it made it more interesting, but maybe okay. Well, I guess from like a narrative standpoint, yeah, it would make it worse.
And from yeah, okay, fine, you're right.
But I mean,
From
to me,
contrast, because I didn't actually like the first 2 chapters.
yeah, they weren't really. I was expecting more from
Right.
like
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell, man? We get like 5 verses? Really?
It's really not great answers in my opinion.
Well, you know what? Next week, we're getting into a different book.
We are?
Yeah, we're doing Zephaniah. And Zephaniah is also 3 chapters.
Yeah, short text.
Right?
It won't
It's
take us a year to do. Hooray. Remember those things that took us a year to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Psalms. That took us half a year.
Psalms, yeah, that was the big one.
Yeah.
What was the other one that was really annoying?
I mean, Chronicles was annoying.
Chronicles.
But no, the thing is,
It wasn't the length of Chronicles that killed it.
Yeah, it
was
wasn't
just Chronicles.
that huge block of wisdom literature that we got through,
that's
too.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When was that? That was.
I don't remember.
And we were
Judges?
doing Ben Sira at the same time.
That's true.
That's right. Which,
Speaking
great
of
that it
which-
tied together, but too bad they both were boring.
Yeah. Speaking of which, what are we going to be covering on Friday?
That's a good question. I'll set up a poll. How does that sound?
Right.
How about you show me the book?
Okay.
You
So
bring it
do you
over
want apocalyptic literature and testaments, or do you want expansions of the Old
here.
Testament?
Apocalyptic literature and testaments. All right, guys.
This is the more interesting one.
Look,
No offense to all the authors of wisdom and philosophical literature, prayers, psalms, and odes.
okay,
those guys.
see, we read the Apocalypse of Abraham.
Yeah.
So, you know what? People who are in our chat right now, tell us either Apocalypse of Daniel, Apocalypse of Elijah, Third Enoch, or Apocalypse of Zephaniah. Those are the choices.
Well,
that I'm
Apocalypse of
putting
Zephaniah would make sense, although it'd be kind of weird to talk about it before we start Zephaniah.
That'd be interesting, too. It'd be like, I don't know, spoilers. We never get to do those.
Yeah, right. It would be like, hey, you know what? You can't even really say spoilers because
Everybody wants Apocalypse of Zephaniah.
They do want-
We're doing Apocalypse of Zephaniah.
we can't really
on
do spoilers.
Friday.
These books have been out for
know,
fucking
that's why
thousands of years.
Thousands, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them.
So we'll be doing Apocalypse of Zephaniah, and then we'll be doing Zephaniah.
Yeah.
Actually, give me that. Give it to me.
Are you gonna find like a really short one or something
I want to see how long the Apocalypse of
of Zephaniah is?
is.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, because although they're all listed out here, it doesn't tell you.
I think there is an index in there. It is in there.
Well, you know what?
But there are
indexes
also
suck.
like a lot of books that are included, and a lot of them are very short. So, yeah, the Apocalypse of Zephaniah, to be read in conjunction with Zephaniah.
Yeah, so this book, Apocalypse of Zephaniah, is... so here's the introduction.
Okay.
And then the actual...
I'll read through the introduction.
You'll read through the introduction.
Yeah.
The actual Apocalypse of Zephaniah is...
not that long.
Not that long. Well, we can handle it in one episode.
Yeah, definitely.
It's only 12 chapters.
But the chapters look really short, though.
Yeah, they're pretty short.
Sounds like the standard Friday Apocryphal podcast.
Yeah,
to me.
Yeah, right. Okay, so yeah, in one weekend, you will get all of your information on Zephaniah.
Everything you could want.
Everything you could possibly want.
The full report.
Yeah, and then we'll publish our book on Zephaniah, and then we'll make it big in Zephaniah Industries.
Let's just do a short
Oh,
story.
yeah.
Yeah. Either way, so yeah, we have it has been decided. So what we're doing.
So with that being said,
let's see what we got.
We've got shelling to do.
Yeah, so we do, and you know what? Nightbot's doing its thing. So we have an Amazon wish list. There are lots of books on the wish list. You can get those books, and we can read them on the show, or we can use them as sources in future long form videos. We also. What else we have? We have a Teespring.
And we have a Patreon.
Yeah, we have a Patreon. That's right.
You could be on the show.
Yeah, you could be right here talking to, well, not right here, but you could be talking to us. And you could also be doing this shilling portion, which is what we
Yeah. Yeah, you
like
could
do
shill
this.
your own stuff.
Absolutely. And there are plenly of other
Imagine
rewards that
all
you
of
get.
the dollar that you would get by shilling your own stuff on our show.
Okay, let's see what else is on there. You get video scripts. You can win T-shirts. You know, every the start of every month, first Sunday of every month, we have a T-shirt giveaway. Which, if you are a patron of $10 or more, you get entered into the giveaway.
Which we'll be doing on the next show.
Yeah, we will be.
Not Friday, but Sunday.
We'll be spinny wheelie just for you guys.
Yep.
Exactly. And you know what? If
You can buy a piece of tagged pins merchandise that's up. You can get yourself this drive, this 666 drive thing.
Yeah.
This shirt.
It's a really good shirt, I think.
You can buy like 20 of them and sew yourself together some bed sheets.
One pin that T. Thanks. Yes. Now we have even more clunky text to use. Let's do that from now on.
Wonderful.
For sure.
So, I mean, we also have Facebook and Twitter. That's free. You can
It is,
follow
yeah.
us on there.
Completely
Send
free.
in your diss tracks to MilwaukeeAtheists@gmail.com.
I would very much appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's all the shilling. And thank you everyone for a great Halloween.
Yeah,
stream. This was a lot of fun.
We'll see you on Sunday.
Ooh,
Friday. Ooh,
spooky. See you Friday.
See you on Friday and then Sunday.